Hey folks, and welcome to another Train Guy video where I sit and talk to myself mostly while driving pretendy trains, while the few folk that watch this do something else entirely in the background, and that's cool, that's fine. So, Manchester, Victoria to Leeds, some new stuff coming out for the game, or just came out for the game as well. Some freight stuff coming to this route soon as well. Don't have the new, can't remember the name of it, the red car route yet either. I'll be picking that up this weekend. But thought, let's get a ride back in with some rattly old diesels on another route. So, I'll just get cracking on in. There's the nice new loading screens as well. Haven't seen those before. Right. We'll just get cracking on with this, I think. Oh, shit, I know what I've not done. Right. Still got it in German train mode. That. Don't quite trust the signals up here yet either, so I'm going to have a little bit more help than I usually do. Right, and now that I've lost precious seconds doing that, I'm just going to quickly restart the scenario. Little bit rusty at this, so could be interesting. And we're still doing these community challenges then, I see. Assuming it's still just wallpapers and stuff that we're getting. Okay, so we'll unlock the right hand doors and just quickly get this all set up. So key on, reverser to engine only, set the straight brake and release the driver's brake. Headlight on, instrument light on. Don't need to bother with the AWS because it's not fitted along the length of this route. Won't actually do anything. So, wait until 10:49:30. Right, okay, so we've actually got a little bit of time in hand, that's fine. Have a little look out the side. Oh, nice. Love a 45, I do. Right, let's get these doors locked up and get ready to go. What had I done wrong there? Oh, wrong. I was in the wrong control mode. Had it in camera when it should have been in control, train control, or whatever it's called. So no point caning it because we're going straight into a 15 mile per hour speed limit zone. This is actually quite a tricky wee stretch of track because it's on quite a fairly steep gradient. I feel like that guy should like have a cigarette hanging out his mouth or something. This is 1983 after all. Okay, so just putting the power on, just trying to be careful to keep the needle here, the amp meter needle in the green, or certainly on the line there. Don't go too far into the yellow to avoid overloading the locomotive. I'm not sure how easy it is to actually overload it. I've had it sort of go mental on me a couple of times, usually because I've been doing something stupid. But you can sort of normally run a little bit into it, I've found, without any problems. Slowed down a bit earlier than I needed to there, I think. Well, not much you can do about it now. Just plough on. Right, first time I came through this station on this route, it was not a stopping train. I thought it was like a boarded up derelict station. I was really quite surprised the first time I was made to stop here. And you half the stations on this line looked like that in 1983, I guess. Right, so we will be able to pick up speed fairly shortly. Just need to wait for the rear of the train to clear the marker. Another reason I've got the heads-up display on this time. I've not quite figured out how to judge how long how far past a signal or what have you I've got, and it's quite difficult as well because the speed limit changes are not always signposted. It's fair to say that in 1983 British Rail's priority was not trackside maintenance with signage and stuff like that. These days their biggest problem is copper wire being stolen. In the 70s and the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s, The signage, the scrap iron was probably worth a fair bit. It's actually quite difficult to know just how accurate Dovetail's recreation of this line is, because there will be records that exist that show theoretically where everything was, but as maintenance crews found to their horror every night when they went out, those diagrams were not always entirely representative of what was actually there. Especially with signposts and things like that. They got knocked over, they got nicked, they disappeared down the years and often not replaced. So unless anybody has like a complete set of photographs of this line from 1983, which I highly doubt, it's actually quite difficult to tell how many of the missing signposts are just omissions on Dovetail's part and were genuinely missing in 1983. Right, I need to pick this up a bit. I'm kind of dawdling slightly. Too busy yakking, not paying enough attention to what the train's doing. So I'm going to shut up for a few minutes. Okay, so we're a little under 2 miles now from Staley Bridge, or as a friend of mine from the neighbouring county calls it, Staley Vegas. So we'll not be accelerating to the 75 miles an hour that the upcoming limit allows. That's just not realistic. In fact, probably won't go much faster than this anyway. I like stuff like that, like just the discarded pallets and stuff by the side of the rail. Their attention to detail definitely gets better with each pack. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the Tees Valley one looks like this weekend. So the signal about a mile from Staley Bridge, getting ready to start braking. We're only about half a mile now from a 15 mile an hour speed limit, so just initial braking on its own should more or less do the trick. It's slightly uphill here on the eastbound run, so gravity will do its bit to help you. Just let the brakes out a little bit because I might just be slowing down. I don't want to spend, you don't want to get down to 15 too early, because the longer you spend crawling along at 15 miles an hour, the longer it takes you to arrive on platform. But you don't want to have to jump on the brakes so hard that you end up going right below 15 as well. So bit of a knack to it. Once you've done the run a couple of times, you'll be fairly comfy with it. And you can always just pop the straight brake on as well to get slightly more controlled braking than you get with the air brakes. Old Victorian Signal Box over there, well, maybe early 20th century one, but very, very rare sight on the railway today. Even by 1983, most of them had been replaced by computers in the 1970s, and those computers were all knackered by the end of the 80s. And the signal boxes they were supposed to replace, by the way, there are still a few of those going strong on, not on the main lines, those are all electric now, but there are still some old signal boxes out on the regional lines. And we'll just drift up to a stop, 20 seconds early as well. Let's do a bit of camera swiveling. Right, so with the passengers are nearly all loaded, we'll just get the menu up in advance. So actually about 15 seconds to go, but you can lock the doors 10-12 seconds early, because remember they did all this manually, so they had to have the thing all closed up by the departure time if they could. So don't wait until that last second to close the doors if you've got the time on the clock. And Just takes a little bit more oomph to get it going on the slight uphill. You have to be careful though, because from a standing start, as you go much above about 30%, you're going up into the yellow, and very occasionally it does just completely go insane on you and shuts everything down, and it's a nuisance. It's easy enough to fix, but a nuisance. So 15 miles an hour on the way out of Staley Bridge. That's all the way up to the tunnel entrance. Up to 60 once the back end of the train has entered the tunnel. There is another thing about speed limits and stuff as well on this line. I don't think they necessarily would have all been signposted, as I was saying earlier on, but the thing is, back then in 1983, everybody driving on these main lines had decades of experience. You didn't get to drive a train unsupervised until you had decades of experience. The drivers knew the speeds, the lines like the back of their hands, hundreds of miles of line at a time, some of them, but it was all in their heads. They knew every single inch of it. And I mean, I've seen, you know, sort of drivers' reports about things that have happened where they talk about the speed limit zone that starts, you know, the 30 mile an hour speed limit effective from, and they'll reference either the nearest milepost next to the track or the number of the bridge or the signal that it starts or ends at or what have you. So the drivers knew the sort of the physical reference points around them to use. So it wasn't exactly critical if a few signposts got nicked. So it goes all dark in the tunnel, I'm afraid. They would actually drive with the cab lights off, and the headlights on the train, they weren't really headlights, they were so people could see you coming, no, so you could see what you were about to run into. I feel like I'm a bit late off the mark getting the power down as well. I think I'm going to be a little bit late into Huddersfield because, again, talky, not drivey. So just boot it for a while. see if I can get the fan to spin up, but engine's obviously not, or the motor's obviously not hot enough yet. I need to duck back into the cab if we hit a tunnel, because there's not enough clearance and the camera does funny things. Might not even make it under this bridge unscathed. Oh, no, we're okay, we're good. So we've got 45 coming up, about a mile and a half down the line. That'll be a nice gentle deceleration, as long as you don't forget it's coming and then have to jam the brakes on at the last second, or worse, after you've gone through it. Doesn't happen that often though. And a little under half a mile to run. You can use this the distance signal here as a fairly reliable braking point. As that comes into sight, just give it initial application and you should be okay. Now up here is where I've been caught by surprise with signals before, but I suspect it's more to do with me not quite understanding what the semaphores are telling me than anything else. The longest tunnel on the route here, I'm afraid. There's really not a great deal to say about this. Part of the reason I've not done a huge amount of videos on NTP. But when the heavy freight pack comes out, that might change. So first of the false tunnel exits coming up ahead. First time you come through this, it can be rather disorienting. It's I wish they would fix it. The weird light effect doesn't seem to be so bad though. It's, I'm not getting strange, mysterious light sources inside the tunnel where the nose of the train is suddenly all visible for a few moments. Although I can see a mystery patch of light on the tunnel wall ahead, so we might get something as we go through it. Oh, that's just kind of warped out of existence. The actual tunnel entrance is round about where the 40-mile-an-hour zone starts, I think. Maybe just slightly ahead of it. So from 65 to get to 40, again, not going to need anything too severe, and you can use the ground signal on the left up ahead as a braking point fairly reliably. We'll just apply them as it comes into view, really, or as it gets close to the train. Don't wait till you've gone past it. I mean, you'll still have time if you go past it. The problem is, unless you know exactly how far past it you are, you could leave it too late. So I don't know how that shows up on the stream, but the mystery light sources are still there a wee bit. So they're not that bad. Oh, why, it was 40, not 45, eh? Duh. You can also use the straight brake for very, very small adjustments like that. Nah, never noticed the barge down there before. So through the tight twisty section, low speed. And we can put the speed back on now. Oh, timed that just nicely. Just have to be a bit careful because it's downhill now all the way to Huddersfield. And most of the way to Leeds, I think, because we've more or less done the uphill part of the journey now. By now you're miles behind in the 47, just because it's so asthmatic coming up that hill. Chuff all you can really do about it either. So the first of 2 speed reductions coming up ahead, 2 miles away from a drop to 50, and then there's a further drop after that to, I think it just goes straight down to 15 as we pull into Huddersfield itself. Fairly straightforward. You just got to remember that you're going down this hill, so you're going to maybe need to be a little bit more adventurous with your braking. Now, I haven't done this in bloody ages, so this could be pretty crap, to be honest, but we'll find out. So I'm just going to make sure the straight brake's off before I plug the driver's brakes in. I want to start doing this a little bit early just because of the massive downhill slope that we're on, comparatively speaking. And I can't mind how good these brakes really are. So there you go, it took us half a mile to lose 5 miles an hour on this gradient. A little bit more. And we'll just go back to let the straight brake take the load. Straight brake's just the electric brake, the locomotive brake, but for a comparatively light passenger train, it is absolutely fine for holding your speed on a hill like this. Much more precise than having the constantly toggling the air brakes on and off as well. So heading into this tunnel, we're just going to initial application of the driver's brake. Going into a 15 up ahead. Initial application should be more or less alright. And you might have to give it a little tap. And in fact, there we go. Once they properly kick in, these old air brakes, they do take a few seconds to sort of come on down the length of the train, so the braking will suddenly get a bit firmer as they all come on. And the more they come on, the longer it takes them to come off as well. You just have to be a little bit ahead of the train. And we're still rolling downhill, so straight brake to just hold that. And again, I know it's not very exciting watching the inside of a dark tunnel in the pitch black, but that is how it would have looked from the cab. You don't turn the lights on in the tunnels, and the headlights were really decorative more than anything else. Well, the idea was that people would see you coming in the gloom rather than anything else. So not bad for time there. You've got to be fairly tight with your braking up here though, because the platform's not that long. I think the inside ones, the braking's even tighter. This one's alright. Aye, close enough. Let's have a look down the back. Yeah, so you've not got that much room. You can't stop too short. Most of these platforms. Really tricky with the 101 on some of the rural stations as well, and some of them, in fact, you can't get the whole train on. It does look a bit silly with all the doors hanging open, but there's obviously no way for them to recreate the effect of having guards on the platforms and stuff like that doing individual doors. So like we did last time, we've got about 20 seconds or so we can have the doors ready to lock up and be ready to actually go on half past. That's the idea here. If you're running a wee bit late, you just have to close them as soon as they're ready, obviously, but we'll start now because it would take a few seconds for the guards to just do them all. Should have had that releasing already, but never mind. Oh, did I leave the throttle plugged in the whole time there? Ha! I don't think I did. So 15 on the way out till we cross the junction and then up to 40. Dewsbury, won't take long to get there, and then the next stop will be Leeds. Ah, nostalgia, eh? Don't make it like they used to. And braking for 50 miles an hour coming up, so 20 mile an hour to lose, downhill gradient, give yourself a bit of room to do this. Use the signal up here as a rough guide to when you can start braking or when you should start braking if you don't want to be absolutely hammering it in panic at the last moment. might need to give it just a little squeeze more, because we are going down a hill. And we're actually on a level surface now, so we shouldn't have to worry about rolling away. But as we cross these points, it does suddenly dive downhill, so you do kind of need to be on your toes a little bit. You can just counter that with the electric brake. And then be ready as you go through this tunnel. This is where the thing levels out. Make sure the straight brake's completely off. It's easy to leave the straight brake on a teeny little bit because you can actually put power on against it, and you will go. So 80 miles an hour now, but we just need to give it a few moments for the back end of the train to cross those points, and you can pretty much just go for it here. I'm not convinced you're actually supposed to be able to do 80 through there, but hey-ho. And there is a little stretch up here where there's a surprise 50, which I think might be an error as well. I tend not to worry about it. So crossing the river, not a bad place to use as a reference point for slowing down a little. You might need to be, or want to be a little bit more aggressive with your brake and do it a little later and a little firmer on the 47, simply because you will be behind time by now in that one. So there we go, down to 45, plenty of time as we go across a set of points. Can't really remember the names of many of these stations. Oh shit, I just noticed how close I am to the station. That wouldn't have been particularly comfortable for anyone down the back, but it wouldn't have been too bad either. The chef will probably hate me forever though. Oh, bang on time. So this is going to be just a load and lock. Not going to be any sitting about. Load and lock. How shit did that sound? What was I thinking? Good lord. I'll be wanting machine guns on my train next. Right. Just get ready to lock the doors as soon as you're done. I left the power in a little bit again there. Oh well. Oh, over revving a little bit. No way they would just leave dead trees lying next to the main line like that now. That's incredible. And yet somehow it all more or less worked. It was all dilapidated and knackered by 1983, but it worked. Man, I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed this. I might even do another one, maybe. see what the time's like. Second longest tunnel, I'm afraid. Again, it's not that great, but we'll be through it fairly quickly. And we also need to lose about 10 mile an hour by the time we exit the tunnel. It shouldn't be too difficult. It's not particularly steep slope, I think, that we go down. Maybe just put a bit of straight braking to balance that speed. And there's definitely the end of the tunnel coming up now, so we'll just pop the driver's brake in briefly. Nice. So just over 2 miles from Leeds, and oh, there's that little surprise speed thing that I always forget is there. It's not signposted at the trackside or anything like that, and it's such a short stretch, that don't really bother my backside. So we will have to be slowing to 25 for the junctions running into Leeds, little over a mile from the junction here. Forget the name of it. So at the 2 mile signal, or well, just about 2 mile signal, bit of light braking, mile to go to the 25, but we are braking downhill, so just give yourself a margin. You might be a minute or two late getting into Leeds, but as long as you're within about 5 minutes or so, it'll give you the green tick. So the last mile or so, the approach to Leeds, it's a funny sort of downhill, uphill, downhill deal going on. Once you've done it a time or two, you should be all right. Know roughly what to expect. So it's 25 across these points, and then we'll be dropping again to 20, I think, and then down to 10. And it's a double yellow, so just keep your eyes open for the next one. Oops, left that just almost a shade late. We're really supposed to be at 20 as we come onto the line. Yeah, there we go, we just made it. So it's fairly steep drop here. All of a sudden, with the 10 mile an hour zone, it's basically within the station boundaries, which is just past the next signal gantries. You're suddenly going uphill slightly, so you don't want to be braking too hard, or you'll be down to 10 really early, and it's a little bit further to go at low speed. And again, just using the straight brake there because it gives you just a little bit more fine control. This is almost the longest part of the trip, this last just 10 mile an hour crawl into Leeds. Because there's actually very, very little time along that whole route where you're not doing something with the controls. You're not just sort of sitting coasting along very often. The 47 you are. It's not got as much traction. It's not as good on the hills as the 45 is. Of course, the 45 was primarily designed to do this route, and the 47 wasn't. The 47 was intended for other stuff. or rather, it was able to do it, but the timetables that came in through the 70s and 80s rather demanded that it was the 45 rather than the 47 doing the pulling. Certainly not as common a sight on the route by the mid 80s. But it's nice to have that bit of variety in the game. It's I played it with oh, what's that one that they did, the museum one, the Living Museum Railway, West Somerset. I played it on that, but wasn't as much fun as having a main line to run it on. So yeah, I did quite like it. I've got a bit of a soft spot for the 47. Because I used to see so many of them when I was a kid. I grew up next to or just down the road from a rail freight depot. You used to see 47s in and out there a lot, or things very similar to them. Admittedly, at 6 years old, couldn't always tell the difference between the very similar looking classes of British rail locomotives of the day. 15 mile an hour, you can hit initial brakes and stop in less than 50 yards. If you remember that, you shouldn't ever have a problem with stopping too short or too long. I think I've stopped more or less. Okay, yeah, we're all on platform. We'll disembark the passengers, and that will be the end of the scenario, or the scheduled service rather. There we go. No idea how the scoring system in this game even works, to be honest. I don't really pay much attention to it. So in fact, that's the first time I've ever made that route running a minute early into Leeds. I've always been a minute or two late. Alright, I might be getting good at this game. Result. Okay, so that was the, what was it? It was the 10:48 Manchester Victoria to Leeds. I thoroughly enjoyed driving it. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I'll see you again. Cheers.